Man, I'm bored.
There's a village over there. Hello everyone, this is my Fury Gad for Fury Warrior. I am Fury Fighters, just flying around right now. I'm gonna go over all the different specs. I've watched a lot of Fury videos, I've seen a lot of people play, and I've listened to what other people say, and viewed their opinions the best I could, thought about it, uh, did all my calculations, and I've mastered the spec for Fury, in my opinion. You know, some people might be different. My spec will be going over single-minded Fury, mainly, because that's what I like, but there is one other spec that I like, and that's my two-hander spec, and it's not gonna be what you expected at all. And I'm gonna go over three different specs. I'm gonna go over all of the stats and all of the abilities, all of the talents that I can possibly go over. Somewhat of a rotation for each one, and my glyphs, of course. That's about it. And then if anybody still has any questions, then you could always message me or email me. Alright, starting off with one-handers, because that's what I am, as you can see. Um, there's no glyphs yet, but if there ever is any glyphs, if Blizzard actually does have glyphs, I'm probably going to go multi-strike, depending on how high my multi-strike already is. For one-hander, I'm going multi-strike over crit over mastery, and the reason for this is um, execute is one of our strongest abilities, and it actually hits with main hand and offhand, which makes it just that tad bit more stronger. And multi-strike actually works two different ways for uh, for execute, and I'll show you that obviously in my talents. So like I said, multi-strike over crit over mastery, and my enchants are going to be all multi-strike, even my weapon enchants. I forget the name of the weapon enchants, and I'm not buying an auction house. I probably should have looked at that before I left Stormwind. I'm just running along here. So yeah, even my weapon, everything I'm going to be running with is multi-strike. And that's about it for my stats for one-handers. Moving on to talents. My one-hander talents and what I like is all depending on what I'm facing. If I'm fighting maybe a feral druid that likes to kite or a pillar, I might choose double time for the double root. If I'm fighting another warrior and I know he's not going to be getting away unless he heroic leaps me, then I'll run Juggernaut, because I'm not really going to need the double charge, because he's not really going to be trying to kite me that much. He's going to be trying to do insta damage, and I'm not really going to need the charge, and I can just use it every 12 seconds. I use Warbringer in a lot of threes matches with a healer for the extra stun, since I run with comps like Warlock. Just the stun is better than the root, and it doesn't DR, so it actually works really well, and it makes for really good CC, especially with lock fears. For my 30 talent, for my one-handers, I like Enraged Regeneration. The other, well, Second Wind I absolutely can't stand. Impending Victory does okay, but I just feel like it's not a big enough heal. Yet anyway. Maybe it will get stronger eventually. But so far, I'm taking Enraged Regeneration. 45 talents, one-hander, sudden death, all the way. Because the reason for this is, now that since I'm here, I'll go into it. multi-strike actually, I've researched this and it actually works, and I was surprised about it. Multi-strike actually makes your attacks hit harder than they actually would with other abilities. Like, if I'm multi-striking, then, or if I'm using multi-strike and I hit you with my both my weapons, like they're both white hits, they're both auto attacks, then I hit you twice, right? Obviously. Well, with multi-strike, it actually makes you hit. It does a chance to do extra damage. So if you crit with your white attacks from your auto attack, then it has a chance to double that damage and do 4 attacks instead of 2. Well, since sudden death is your auto attacks have a 10% chance, then that's increasing your chance by a tons, because you have, instead of just one weapon, you have 2 weapons, and it's almost like having 4 weapons all hitting simultaneously. It's really, really good. And then on top of that, since multi-strike is pretty much a heal, then your enrage regeneration helps because you get a bigger crit heal. And on top of that, since it's damage too, you're delivering extra damage. Since your execute is probably one of your strongest attacks, you're doing extra damage with your extra healing or extra auto attacks. So multi-strike is definitely the best stat to be going here. For 60, I'm really not liking Dragon's Roar whatsoever. I don't know where you would use that, or if you would use it at all. Really liking Shockwave and 3s, the big AoE stun. Somebody's on my healer, there's 2 DPS, and they're wrecking my heals, and they're CCing her. I'll just run up, bam, pop my Shockwave, and ruined whatever they were doing. Stormbolt, I'm liking for BGs, maybe 2v2s, where I'm fighting a Feral Druid, and he tries to kite me, and I just wreck him because he can't get away to heal. I can throw that Stormbolt if he tries to run. 75 talents. I'm never choosing my spell reflection just because I don't feel the need to spell reflect my teammate. Since I'm a warrior and I have low health, a lot of people train me and not my heals because they think they can CC her. So I enjoy having a smaller cooldown spell reflect, even though it's only by 25 seconds, unless you, or even though it's only by 5 seconds, since it's 25 and 30. I just feel like my spell reflection comes up faster, and not 5 seconds faster. I feel like it's a shorter cooldown. Like, I feel like my spell reflection is like a 10-second cooldown or something, because I can spell reflect, and by the time I need it again, I look down and it's already back up. So I don't ever really catch myself using my spell reflection. I have used vigilance, and I'm actually liking this because it's a huge damage reduction, especially if you have a heals and they're being trained by like a pally, which has 2-minute cooldown on wings. So this works perfectly. You see somebody with wings, you pop this on your heals or your other DPS that they're bursting on, and you just completely ruin wings. My 90 talents, really don't like Blade Storm. Can't stand it. It's so easily counterable. You know, you Blade Storm, and I heroic leap out of it. You Blade Storm, if I'm on my mage, I'll blink out of it. My Warlock, I teleport out of it. My DK, I mean, I don't really have anything to get out of that, but I'm pretty sure there's something they can do, you know. Their healer, if they're running with a priest, their priest could probably grip them out of it. DKs can take a ton of damage. I'd probably just go Blood Presence and be like, yeah, screw you. Your Blade Storm did nothing to me. So, I don't know. Almost everything has an ability to counter this. I really don't like it. What is that mage? Get over here, you mage. Yeah. I'm really liking Bloodbath for the constant, steady damage. So 1 minute cooldown. It goes great with my burst, you know. I'll catch myself bursting. I'll be at full rage. I might have 1 or 2 procs of raging blows. I'll have my wild strikes going, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere I'll get my execute proc, and I'm like, holy moly, let me pop my trinket, my bloodbath, you know, my recklessness, and I can just spam people down, execute, use my raging blows, use all my wild strikes, restart my rotation, and about that time, by the time I get everything back up and I'm ready to burst again, all my, well, not all my cooldowns, but Bloodthirsty's back up, or Bloodbath's back up, some of my other abilities, and I'm ready to burst again. I might not have a wreck, but I have a lot of 1 minute cooldowns that I can use, you know, my trinket will be back up, things like that. Avatar, I'm really liking Avatar. It's really good. 2v2 situations, BG situations. It's a 3 minute cooldown, so it's really long. I don't like the 3 minute cooldown, but I can't deny where it has its moments to shine, because when I'm bursting and I have my sudden death proc and I've got a couple of raging blow procs and I've got a lot of rage, pop my Avatar, somebody dies. It's just gonna happen. For my 100 talents, one-hander, really can't choose anything but Siegebreaker. I know a lot of people message me all the time and go, change to anger management, you're bad, blah blah blah, you're a noob, this and that. It's because they don't spec exactly like me, and that's the reason they want to use anger management. But it's 30 rage for 1 second cooldowns. 1 second does not matter that much, and since you're a Fury Warrior, you're not going to be using, or since you're a one-hander, you're not going to be using all of your rage that often. It's not like you're spamming rage down all the time 24/7. A lot of the times I'm actually trying to build up my rage to use my defense so I don't die, and if I'm not doing that, then I'm building up for my burst, in which case I'm just gonna spend all of it on wild strikes. And then what did I do? I got like, what, 10 seconds off a cooldown? I'd much rather take Siegebreaker, because Siegebreaker, even though it replaces fear, it does extra damage, which buffs up the one-hander, makes them even stronger. And since I have multi-strike, a chance to do extra damage, Siegebreaker does a little bit more damage. And since it's another CC, if I'm running with a lock, or another stun, I'm running with a lock, it doesn't break fear, because my fear from intimidating shout obviously DRs with lock fear. So Siegebreaker is my go-to choice. I use Ravager, but it's in a different spec, and I'll get to that later, since I said I was going over 3. This is it for my one-handers. Alright, so I have 2 different specs now. I'm going to go over two-hander, and then I'm going to do what I call my special spec. And my special spec is for people who have played Fury for a long time. Maybe, I mean, new people can use this too, and do good with it, but it's mainly for those people who know how to play Fury, and they know they're gonna be rage starved. They're gonna have to know. You're gonna have to learn how to play that spec. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be way difficult. It's gonna be a class that I don't see a lot of people play, but it does good damage, and I wouldn't count it out. And I've actually done more damage with it than probably either one of my one-hander or my two-hander specs, all because of how the class works. So my two-hander spec, I'm going with mastery over multi-strike over crit, and the reason for this is mastery increases your damage while you're enraged, and most of my abilities are proc based abilities like Raging Blow, so I'm going to need that extra damage from mastery. And since I'm using two-handers, my auto attacks they're gonna have higher crit. You know, you're gonna crit a lot more often with your auto attacks. It's gonna be decent. You're gonna take mastery over crit, since you already have a good decent amount of crit. I put multi-strike over crit because multi-strike gives me a chance to do extra damage and extra healing, which we'll get into my setup later about that. And then crit is my last, because I find crit a little bit on the weak side. I still have crit in my gear. It's not like I'm just completely shunned from crit. but it's definitely not the major ability because you're not gonna need crit that much. And the way that I set up my two-handers is the same thing for my 15 talents, same thing I said before. My 30 talents do change a little bit. I find myself using Impending Victory because the heal on it is 15% of your maximum health, and if you have two-handers, you have more health than you have with one-handers, so it's a little bit of a bigger heal. Probably still not as good as Enrage Regeneration, but since you're going to be using your 45 talent Unquenchable Thirst, you're not going to need the big Enrage Regeneration heal anymore, and it wouldn't help to use it because you're probably not going to need it that often when you can just take the little bit of damage and the heal whenever you're dropping. Maybe you got CC'd, you come out of a CC, you can just use that and then go back to your normal rotation. So 45 talent, Unquenchable Thirst, and this is where Mastery comes into play with multi-strike. The reason that I'm using the Mastery is Bloodthirsty is obviously a heal, and Bloodthirsty already has a crit chance on it. You can see right there, Bloodthirsty has a 30% additional chance to crit. So you're going to get crits from Bloodthirsty, which is going to enrage you more often, which is why I took Mastery over Multi-Strike over crit. And the reason for that is because you're going to be enraged a lot more. With my Multi-Strike, the reason that I chose that is because Unquenchable Thirst is pretty much a big, huge, ginormous heal, and you can just spam it. You can spam Bloodthirsty, and you're going to get procs, you're going to get Raging Blow procs, and you're going to get Wild Strike procs, and you're going to be like, why is this broken? This is what I call the noob spec. I personally don't like playing this because I feel like if you play this spec, you really don't know how to play Fury that well, and you're learning, and that's why you would choose more healing, because you could choose a lot more damagey, bursty spec over healing. But I have nothing against this spec. I mean, I've used this spec, obviously. I've found it out. I've worked with it. I've seen what's best with it, so I know how it works, and I don't hate this spec at all. It's just, I really think there's a better spec out there. For 60 talents, same thing go. Shockwave, Stormbolt, depending on what you're fighting, how it's going. Same way for 75 talent. I like these two. Don't ever choose Massive Reflection, in my opinion. There might be a case where you would use it, but I don't see it. Maybe if you're running against a druid and they're trying to clone your heals. But then again, clone will DR if they clone enough. So I would probably just let the clone hit them, try my best to survive. You know, and since I'm running with a lock they could fear, I could easily pummel because with my one-hander spec, which I like running, I have a lot of CC, so I don't think the healer would be able to get the clone off anyway, unless I was CC'd, in which case it wouldn't really matter, because if I'm CC'd, they're probably not going me, I'm not their focus target, so yeah. 90 talents for my two-hander. I'm still choosing Bloodbath. I don't see a point for Avatar, since you already have a pretty good, decent amount of crit rate. I mean, Avatar could be good. I could see where you would use it. But I find Avatar is counterable for two-handers, because a lot of people, you know, they're not scared of Avatar with one-handers. They're like, oh, what's he going to do? He's one-handers. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. But if you have these big, huge, ginormous two-handers, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere you pop Avatar and your weapons get 30 foot long, then people start to notice, and people are like, oh, let me get out of the way of that. Let me CC him, since it's only a short cooldown. Or since it's only a short time and it's a long cooldown. So they just kind of run from you. I don't really pick Avatars two-handers. I did use Blade Storm, and I still take Blade Storm with two-handers. But you got to know when to use it. The only time I really take a Blade Storm is with a Rogue. And we'll get into that into my next spec. If I take a Blade Storm, I can't explain I really don't like this. I really don't like Blade Storm. Like, it's just not something that I like unless I'm using it defensively. It's not really my go-to ability for DPS rotation. Uh, and since you're using Unquenchable Thirst and you could be spamming Bloodthirsties, if you get stuck in a Blade Storm, that's going to be somebody's opportunity to be like, oh, he's not healing right now, let me do some damage to him. So even though you're getting damage off on them, they could probably be doing damage to you since you're not spamming your Bloodthirsties and keeping yourself up. If you're going to use Blade Storm, I definitely want to make a cancellation macro. For 100, since you're using Unquenchable Thirst, it only makes sense to go Anger Management, because you're going to be spamming all of your rage. Since Bloodthirsty builds rage, you're just going to be spending crazy amounts of rage. It would only make sense to use Anger Management, because 30 rage is no problem. There you go, three Raging Blows, and execute Wild Strike, 1 Wild Strike, you know, so there you go. If you really like Anger Management, I recommend going Unquenchable Thirst, which is what I use for my 2-hander spec. And that's about it besides glyphs, and I'll go back and do glyphs in a minute because they're all gonna kind of somewhat be the same. Moving on to my last spec is this is the spec of all specs. I figured this out. I don't see a lot of people running this spec at all. It's probably not gonna happen, and everybody is gonna be like, they're not gonna know what I'm talking about, and they're not gonna know what to do when they hear about this spec, and they're probably not gonna believe it, but it's actually pretty good, and it does require some skill to play, and I will probably not see anybody doing it because a lot of people just want that insta bursting damage that is gonna get kills, and this spec doesn't have it instantly. It's not that insta skill, no skill. It's just the insta damage right then and there when they need it, and that's what a lot of people like. Even some of the high rated players that